Bien le bonjour, welcome to this fourth part. Hope you won't doze off too quickly. C'est parti! First MMORPG entry in the series, the game evolved throughout its many years, adding, balancing and changing, or even abandoning features. You start by creating a character, selecting a race between 5, a starting job between 6, and a starting town between 3. Although you have to choose a job, your character will always start with all 6 of them at level 1. The only difference being the onion weapon you start with, save for the monk that starts with a white belt. The other jobs are unlocked later under some conditions, and you can get them all on the same character. These jobs are part of an MMORPG Holy Trinity, with the protector that wears the heavy armors, has a set of skills to help get enemies hate, and to enhance its survivability at the cost of its damage output. The second type of job is the damage dealer, which is the tank's opposite, as it can inflict more damages while taking a lot more too. In both cases, they only have so much in healing or self-healing abilities. That's why the healer job has the task to keep everyone healthy, but is also fragile and often poorly performing DPS-wise. Just like any MMORPG, you have to team up with other players using other jobs to make up for each other's weaknesses, and also to take on harder content. Let's take a more thorough look at the job system. Your character doesn't have its own level, so you're relying on your active main job. Jobs have their own level like in FF3, but also unlock passive effects, buffs and cooldowns like in FF5. The buffs last for longer periods of time for yourself or the team, while the cooldowns give a stronger boost for a more limited amount of time. You can associate a support job to your main one to benefit the most of the former, up to half the level of the main job. For example, if your main job is level 24, you can use the support job's skills and passives up to level 12. Main and sub-job changing is really inflexible and can only be done through Moogles in your Mog House or Nomad Moogles. Now about the combat skills. Coming from FF2, it has been improved a lot upon, this time counting even defensive skills such as evasion and parrying, while still retaining the weapons and magic. The jobs do not have combat skills by default, and must therefore unlock them by leveling their weapon mastery. Considering that those combat skills are tied to a category of weapon, if you decide to try another kind, the combat skills you previously obtained would become unavailable until you go back to that type of weapon. Even if all weapons can't be used by all jobs, their mastery is tied to the character itself, meaning that training a warrior in sword and shields until you unlock and switch to paladin will keep your sword and shield levels. Each job has also proficiency in the skills ranging from A+ to E. Some skills can even be exclusive to a job and/or a specific weapon. Magic spells are unlocked the same way as FF5, but with a school and a level restriction. When you learn a spell, you can use it with all the other jobs that have access to this school of magic and the minimum job level required. And like weapons, magic schools have a skill level and some exclusive spells. A raid mage isn't able to use all the white mage spells. The skill level affects your chance of having a spell resisted and its damages. I'll look more into the jobs, spells and skills in future videos. Last point about the fighting system that has one interesting subtlety, the tactical points. The players and the enemies primarily gain TP with the damages above 0 they receive and physically inflict. Regulating the TP gained by enemies and players thanks to passive effects and skills can play a major part in encounters against bosses. The TP can be stocked up to 3000 and are generally used entirely for weapon skills starting from 1000. The power and/or added effects varying depending on the TP consumed above 1000. Further details will be provided in the appropriate videos. This episode went back to the ATB gauges, though they only served as adding a casting time once you selected an action. Although, like in FF11, there was no random encounters anymore in pre-rendered arenas. The enemies were wandering around and you could initiate a fight whenever you wanted. For the series' 20th anniversary, another version, ironically called International Zodiac Job System, was released only in Japan. At least until this version was used for the Zodiac Age remaster. And the differences didn't stop at the subtitle. But I'll only cover the most important ones, most of them are related to balancing and name changes. A unique feature called licenses was found in the game. Licenses block the use of equipments, spells and skills until you bought the corresponding licenses with license points won by killing enemies and bosses alongside EXP points. The licenses could be sorted in 3 categories: equipments, spells and skills, and lastly, passive boosts and effects. In the original game, all characters had the same license board, so everyone could equip everything and use all spells and skills. Whereas in the Zodiac version, there were 12 different boards tied to jobs reminiscent of the classes in the previous FF games. Each character had to choose a job, and just like the first Final Fantasy, it was permanent. So you had to think about balancing your team. But at least you could look at the entire boards before making a decision. Fortunately, in the Zodiac Age remake, you were allowed to unlock a second job a bit later in the main story, either to keep improving your strong points, or to even the first job's weaknesses. Exactly like in FF5, when you obtained a spell, every character could then use it as long as you also bought the corresponding license. A feature coming from FF10 allowed you to swap your active characters by going through the menus. There were, however, 2 differences. The character being replaced had to not be currently targeted by an enemy, even if it was still charging, and when all 3 active characters were down, you were forced to swap at least one of them by a conscious character if you still had one. Once again, like in FF10, the summons acted as allies on the field. However, in the original, you had no real control over them, just like the guest characters. In the Zodiac, you could select and control them like another character. I'll get back to it in the appropriate video. Regarding the VIPs, they temporarily joined your party during some parts of the stories as a 4th member of your active team. In the original version, once they joined your party, they would never get any more EXP whatsoever and you couldn't control them. In the Zodiac version, similar to the summons, they acted almost as a real 4th member of your team. They would get EXP and levels, you could control them or even set them as leaders, as well as customizing their gambits. Only their equipments and licenses couldn't be changed no matter the version of the game. Finally, the gambit system. So as to not have to control every moves of your character, you could program gambits for the others and your leader to act in a particular way in response to specific situations, like using an antidote when an ally gets poisoned, or using ice spells on enemies weak to that element. The left part of the gambit determined what will trigger the action on the right part. Those triggers could be either found in treasure chests or bought in Gambit's shops. You also had to pay attention to the priority order to avoid issues like not being healed when you were about to die, because it's under Gambit telling to use a fire spell on an enemy weak to it. This game mixed Final Fantasy mechanics with real-time strategy. One human character led a party of monsters and everything was organized around 4 types of units: the melee, the flying, the ranged, and finally the support that was classified as range 2 but could only cast healing, dispelling or buffing spells without attacking. Akin to rock, paper, scissors, each of the units were strong against another one and weak against the third one. Monsters had these unit types and most of them, as well as some characters' equipments, also had an element adding another layer of weaknesses and advantages. Gambits only served as automatically using 1 skill per main character as long as it wasn't on cooldown. Wakey, I'm done for today. Next part will put an end to this journey. Prenez soin de vous et amusez-vous bien.